山セントラルの一等地を要求する。朝だろうと昼だろうと。
That's Jean Boy's voice.
酒をかっくらってやる。嫁も子供も孫の代まで幸せに暮らせる権利があるはずだ。
Oh, it is Mikasa. Scar? Wow, look at Jean Boy. Isn't that a nice thought?
俺は気がつかなかった。何も聞かなかった。引くな。考えるな。
That's impossible
どうしていれば
for Jean Boy.
セントラルの一等地が手に入る。
Wow, yeah. That's quite a distinct dream he has.
エレンを止めるためだ。皆殺しは間違ってる。
どうやって止めるんですか？
まず協力者を集める。従来の兵団組織は壊滅して、もう私は君たちの上官でもない。その上で聞くけど。
やります。
Whoa.
これ以上エレンに虐殺なんてさせたくありません。それが私たちやこの島を守るためであっても、エレンを止めたいんです。
本当にエレンを止められたとして、どうするつもり
It's
で
a
すか？
good question. It's a really good question.
その後この島はどうなりますか？
Jean Boy.
何十年後の未来もずっと世界から向けられる憎悪が消えないなら、エレンを止めることはこの島を滅ぼすことになります。
Always asking the right questions.
マーレからすれば島に奇襲を仕掛けた途端、地ならしだ。
Love the framing
少な
here.
くとも今後しばらくはこの島に手は出せないと思う。
完全に島を滅ぼさないといつ世界が滅ぼされる
Wow.
かわからないと。
それはもっともだろうが、いずれにしろ島が滅
A
ぶに
few more years.
何年かは猶予ができるはずだ。
でもそうやって可能性を探してるうちに時間が過ぎて、何一つ解決できなかった。だからエレンは世界を消そう。
虐殺はダメだ。これを肯定する理由があってたまるか。
There's that scar. They purposely showed it again.
ジャンの言う通りエレンがこうなったのは私の不甲斐ない理想論のせいだ。それにこんなこと吠えて逃げようとしていたんだよ。でも私はまだ調査兵団の団長だ。人類の自由のために心臓を捧げた仲間が
Wow.
見ている気がする。大半は壁の外に人類がいるなんて知らずに死んでいった。この島だけに自由をもたらせばそれでいい。そんなケチなこと言う仲間はいないだろう。
Ha.
ハンジさん、俺はまだ調査兵団です。
Oh.
誰か手伝ってくれないかな。睨み合ってないでさ。
To be expected.
私たちは虐殺なんて望んでない。じゃなきゃこそこそ森に逃げ隠れてシチューなんか作ってないよ。
正義だと。
Oh boy.
今正義を語ったのか。あんたらが送り続けてきた巨人に抵抗してきた俺たちが悪だったのか。あのな、そもそも壁破られて目の前で母親が食い殺されていなきゃな、エレンはこんなことしてねえよ。地ならしまで追い詰めたのはお前らだろうが。
おい、今さら歴史の話をしようっていうのか。
It's a dark history, all right.
蹂躙したのはエルディアだってことぐらいは理解してるんだろうな。
That's a long time ago, though.
2000年も前のことでいつまで被害者面してやがる。
見たわけでもない2000年前のいざこざ話なんて退屈だ。元帥殿は私たちの存在に困惑しておられるのだよ。この島を根絶やしにしようとした世界の人々を楽園を捨ててまで助けようとする奇怪な悪魔の
Loving the
存
tone
在。
Hanji's taken here.
私たちは外の世界で数ヶ月暮らした。
Ooh.
もう何も知らない島の悪魔には戻れない。
エレンを殺せるの？エレンを止める方法は殺すだけじゃない。あんたはそう言うと思ったけど、それじゃあ何？説得でもするの？
それはわからないよ。エレンと話してみないと。
じゃあ対話が可能だとして、それでも虐殺をやめてくれなかったときは、
A lot of difficult questions being posed here
エレンが
on both ends.
アホになるからわからないの。結局はそうでしょ、ミカサ。 あんたにとってエレンより大事なものなんて考えたこともないだろうからね。つまり私を殺すべきだと。
レオンハート、
説得してエレンを止められるのならそれでいい。少なくともその時まで私たちは争うべきじゃない。
I love that subtle animation there.
分かった。
I love how Annie's holding out her hand. No cut.
清美さん曰く地ならしの視察用に
アズマビート
飛行艇を港に用意してあるらしい。それを使えばあの始祖の巨人に近づける。
だからこいつをさらった。イエーガーがまず向かう先はどこだ。
Yelena.
知るわけない。
なぜならこいつも同じク
Oh.
ソ野郎のマーレ人だから。
Is that right?
マーレに失望していたあなたはある物語を作り出した。それは王子様と世界を救う奇跡の物語。
何億もの命を救うという崇高な胸の高鳴りに身を任せ、これまでの遺恨などなきもののように喉へと流し込む。あなたが壁に穴を開けたことでどれだけのエルディア人が巨人に食い殺されたでしょうね。普段は良識人のあなたがあそこまで派手に軍港を破壊するとはある意味民間人を含めどれだけの死体
Perhaps
の
the
山と
most, right?
戦果を上げたことでしょう。あなたは車力を撃つためにそこにいるファルコ少年めがけ勇猛果敢に雷装を打ち込みました。サシャは
Wow.
本当にいい子でしたから私も悲しかった。
ありがとうエレナ。お互いのわだかまりをここで打ち明けて心を整理させようとしてくれたんだよな。
Magath shared his drink, huh?
以前教えてもらったあなたの親友の名前はそうだ、マルコだ。
Oh.
確か彼の死に兄が関わって
Annie
いる
and
と
Reiner are sitting right there. Annie was actually quite upset about that.
私がマルコから立体起動装置を取り上げた。だからマルコは巨人に食われ。
兄は俺の命令に従っただけだ。
How's Jean gonna react to this?
空中でマルコを屋根に叩きつけ動けないように押さえつけている間に
He just wanted to talk,
兄の
man.
立体起動装置をマルコはその場から動けないまま巨人に食われた。
Wow.
マルコは最後に何か言ってなかったか。
He wanted to talk.
俺たちはまだ話し合ってないって。
そうだよ。俺たちはろくに話し合ってない。だからどっちかが死ぬまで殺し合うみてえなことになっちまったんじゃねえのか。
Wow.
今からでも遅くないよ。これだけしのぎを削り殺し合った者同士が。
マルコが巨人に食われるのを見ながら俺はなんで
Right.
マルコが巨人に食われているんだと思った。
Yeah, the persona.
もういいって。罪悪感で頭がおかしくなっちまったんだろ。
許せないでくれ。俺は本当にどうしようもない。
もういいって。
すまない。
Oh. Oh boy. Oh, he broke his nose. That's a lot of rage coming out. Oh.
パラディ島のあなたたちを皆殺しにすることが希望でした。世界から認めてもらい許してもらうためにお父さんやお母さんがレベリオのみんなが消えてなくなることになりました。ごめんなさい。
Wow.
すごくずうずうしいことは分かってますが皆さんの助けが必要です。どうか私たちに力を貸してください。
話せ。
Damn, man. Jean. I love how a major focus of this episode is Jean.
じゃんおかわり
Let him go, let him go, let him go. He'll be back at some point. No, he'll be back, he'll be back. Wow. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
うるせえな。
協力してくれるの？
ああ もちろんだ。
Of course.
ほら、いつまで寝てんだライナー。
Oh man.
怪我なんてとっくに治ってんだろうが。
Reiner, my dude. Constant pain.
ガビ、蹴って悪かった。大丈夫か？
うん大丈夫平気。
そうか。
Hmm.
ライナー、お前には謝らねえからな。
ああ、それでいい。
港がイエーガー派に占拠されています。
Oh boy.
対
This
巨
sets
人
it
の
up.
装備の兵士たちが多く戦闘態勢でした。
Whoa, Azumabito. Kiyomi and Flock. I believe that was the same score from episode 14, right? Part 1. It showed us a quick flash of Zeke and Kasawa-san playing ball. Wow. I've got to say, I really, really enjoyed that episode. Okay, folks. So, yeah, I think that episode was really quite necessary, right? Before it goes any further. I feel like this episode certainly added that authenticity or credibility to this situation, this group of people coming together, right? I mean, I kind of say that loosely. Yes, they are kind of coming together and they do kind of set their differences aside, but it's not as if they forgot about the things they've done to each other, right? It's one of those really rare situations that does kind of allow each of these individuals to kind of set aside some of these differences, like I just mentioned. But yeah, I thought this was certainly necessary after the last episode, because I guess the nature of that last episode, the pacing of that episode didn't quite allow for this, right? So in that sense, I think this was the perfect follow-up episode to that, right? The entire episode devoted to this as it needed to be, right? Because you have to sell this. This portion of it has to be believable. That's why I brought up the notion of credibility, right? And authenticity. Speaking of authenticity and credibility, Jean, oh my goodness, man. He continues to be one of the most authentic characters, one of the most authentic humans of this story, essentially, right? I've said this time and time again that he is the most human of the cast, right? And not human in just the positives, right? Human in the sense that he is able to kind of think of the easy route, right? As all humans do. And this has been clear since season 1. And this episode had a lot of callbacks, right? It was full of musical callbacks and just callbacks in general. And of course, Isayama-san loves a good callback. One episode that was really kind of being brought back to the forefront, and an episode I was really thinking about throughout this episode as well, was episode 16 from season 1, right? Again, another Jean-centric episode, right? And that was one of the other episodes that really established him as the most believable, right? The most authentic, the most relatable in that sense. And it continues here in season 4, part 2, as he kind of has this inner struggle, right? A believable inner struggle, right? Because it really sells that notion of someone actually being in this messed up situation and how they would react. And as a massive fan of Jean, I've got to say I'm really loving that he's potentially taken up the role of protagonist, right? In the absence of Eren, that is. Because there's been quite a bit of focus on him since the Rumbling or the Stampede of the Titans was initiated, right? In these past 4 episodes, I mean, Jean is all over this, right? And especially these past 2 episodes now. And this episode itself was, again, a really Jean-centric episode, much like episode 16 of season 1. And again, a lot of parallels there, right? Him kind of having that inner struggle, asking all the right questions, even if they are quite harsh, ultimately coming to the right conclusion, because of course, in his heart of hearts, he knew he's always going to be on this side. He is going to help them out, right? Much to Gabby and Falco's relief, essentially. All of us know this. All of us know that he is going to arrive at this conclusion, that he was always going to arrive at this conclusion. I'm forever a scout, right? As he told Hanji-san. But, that doesn't that doesn't stop him from asking some of these tough questions that need to be asked, right? And I'll kind of get into that, but I kind of want to get into kind of the creative approach of this episode, the direction of this episode. It's got to be one of the most unique episodes of Shingeki, actually, in that sense. Certainly the most unique of these past 4 episodes, right? There's a distinct and unique style in this episode. There's a lot of rapid cuts. There's a lot of panning backgrounds, a lot of panning frames. Really distinct look and direction and stylistic choice. You could tell this is clearly, again, my knowledge of anime production isn't, it's still kind of in its infancy, essentially. But, even I can tell that clearly there is someone that is being brought on, or someone that came on and really utilized their own approach. And, again, as most of this episode is based around communication and the importance of communication, and there is, in fact, a lot of talking it out, even if it does kind of bring back some tough memories, some bad memories, attached to each one of these characters. Again, I can only speak for myself, but I really appreciated this approach, because you do have to take a unique approach to something like this. A lot of characters just talking it out for the entire episode, essentially. So I think in that sense, this approach was the right approach. Again, in my opinion, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I really did, because it was something quite unique. And I'm always looking for that. I'm looking for a unique approach, something different, something that kind of deviates a bit from the norm. And yeah, I've got to say, I really enjoyed that approach to this. And given the subject matter of this episode, there is a lot of tension, right, as expected. So I think this approach, this creative approach, really played into that, or it kind of enhanced that, right? And, these rapid cuts or panning to backgrounds, or these branches and the massive tree trunks. And I do think the difference in density also plays a part here. It's going from a really dense forest to kind of, at one point, it just kind of goes to the sky, right? The open sky. And I believe that's at the exact same time Reiner mentioned they haven't even talked yet. And this is as he's repeating Marco's final words. I thought it was a great approach. I really did. And I think it also kind of depicted this inability that they might have throughout the night to actually see eye to eye. The inability to maybe, face these questions, or face each other, or face the people you've done so much harm to, right? Or you've brought so much pain to, essentially. They're all connected through a lot of these things that have gone down over the past few years. Now, this creative approach, or this, stylistic choice, it's certainly a new one for Shingeki, one that I certainly appreciate. But, it's not new in the sense that I've never seen it before. I've seen this utilized in film, these types of cuts, rapid cuts, or, panning backgrounds or panning frames. And listen, given the fact that it is an entire episode that just kind of, relies on this conversation playing out, this dialogue playing out, you do need to take a creative approach. And then, of course, there's also the quadrant framing really prominently featured throughout this episode. And again, it's like a perfect match given the situation and the subject matter, right? And of course, that quadrant framing gives you that negative space in the framing, right? In the composition. And, a lot of times you can associate that with things like oppression, right? Isolation, things looming above the person's head or the character's head, right? Guilt, and disconnect, all of that, right? And again, that really plays into the themes and the subject matter of this episode and the things the characters are kind of dealing with, or trying to, at least, in this episode. So I thought, again, that was also another fantastic choice in this episode. But, I love how by the end of the episode, a lot of these things kind of switch up, don't they? A lot of those quick cuts are gone. Those rapid cuts are gone. That panning to the tree branches and all of that, or the backgrounds, that's all gone. It feels like there's clarity by the end of this episode. And again, I love that one shot of Gabby kind of looking up, and she sees Jean, right? And you see the open sky above Jean. You see some of the branches, but the sky is the feature of this shot, right? And as Jean is there too. So again, clarity for Jean. So yeah, I think this has certainly been one of the most interesting episodes in terms of visual storytelling, for sure. for sure. And of course, the forest and the branches and all of that is clearly a theme that was established in season 4, part 1, right? The children of the forest, or keep the children out of the forest. Yeah, it's certainly a play here. I mean, it's kind of unmissable, right? There's a few things in this episode that are kind of, really unmissable. Kind of like Hanji-san saying, genocide is unacceptable, unforgivable, right? Of course, that's a given. That's not something that really needs to be stated, yet it was stated. So in that sense, you see that Isayama-san is taking a hardline approach to this, right? You see, I mentioned a lot of really difficult questions and necessary questions being asked, and that kind of takes us to the beginning, right? I was about to call it the cold open, but no, there is no opening in this. So I thought even that was quite effective, going right into the title card. Jean asking the questions I've kind of even pondered, right? And I'm sure many of you guys have, thought of these questions for a long time, given that, a lot of you have read the manga. So he's asking that question, right? Okay, so say they do end up stopping Eren somehow, or they, convince him to stop somehow. So what's the next move after that, right? That essentially leaves them open for an attack, right? You see that they're not delusional. Characters like Jean and Hanji are not delusional about, the things that might come into play if they were to stop this, if they stop Eren. They know there's going to be a reckoning, right? They're not delusional. Jean is really, putting it up front. I certainly didn't get the feeling that Hanji thinks that if they do end up stopping Eren in this Stampede of the Titans, that they are going to be left alone. No, I think she understands. Yes, they are going to face the wrath at some point, as Jean rightfully stated, right? I mean, it's almost to be expected that, yeah, they are going to come back for the Eldians, and it is a scary prospect, right? It's a grim prospect given the fact that there are no more walls anymore. The wall titans are out, and yeah, they're open to it. They are open to it, no matter how long it takes. Sooner or later, retaliation is expected. I think it's a realistic expectation to have. And you see, characters like Jean, who is quite realistic. He has been since day one, essentially. I mean, there's been a fantastic progression there. I mean, there's some phenomenal character development, but, he's a thinker. He understands how things really are. He's a realist. And you see, in that sense, Hanji doesn't quite present any ideas in terms of, how to handle it after, right? But that's the point I'm trying to make. Isayama-san is clearly taking a hardline approach here, right? Even that is not enough of a reason to, be for genocide, right? Even that notion of, that unknown of how, they might have to face the wrath, or how the rest of the world might come back for them, even that is not enough to justify genocide. And you see that Isayama-san is spelling it out, essentially, right? And like I said, it's not something that really needs to be stated, right? That genocide is unacceptable, but he is spelling it out, right? So, that should tell you all you need to know about his approach to this, this hardline approach to this. And you see that Hanji-san is quite upset about how she kind of handled these situations. She is quite upset that she let Eren down, and ultimately Eren had to put this into motion, right? Because she blames herself for not coming up with some kind of fix to this problem. And you see that Jean's frustration is there too. And I feel like his frustration also kind of doubles as some of the fan base's frustration in that sense, right? That they spent years, they wasted years essentially trying to come up with some kind of solution, but they came up with nothing essentially, right? And again, ultimately that leads to Eren putting this into motion. Though of course there's much larger things at play there as well, right? In terms of Eren putting this into motion. Kind of the whole notion of him being a slave to his sense of freedom, right? Being trapped in this loop of his, this sense of freedom that is almost unattainable, essentially, but he is trapped by it. He is trapped in it. And then, you see Jean kind of bats for Eren, doesn't he, against Magath, or Magath. He tells him, if it wasn't for you guys sending these titans to take down the walls and try to take back the founding titan, Eren, wouldn't have done any of this, right? His mother would have been alive. He wouldn't have done any of this. And then it kind of continues that idea that, one of his biggest rivals, even though, they're not rivals in the sense that they want to kill each other or anything, but, since day one, right? Essentially, Eren and Jean have been rivals. But, they do have a mutual respect as well. But you see that Jean is perhaps one of the only individuals that really understands Eren, right? You see that he brought up that point in part 1 as well, that there might have been an ulterior motive to him kind of distancing himself from Mikasa, right? He brought that up. You see here, he's batting for Eren, right? Because he understands Eren's, or at least he understands some of the rage. He understands some of the reasoning for all of this. Of course, he doesn't agree with him, initiating the Stampede of the Titans. But yeah, he has an understanding for Eren and his character, essentially. And I love that. I really do love that relationship Jean has with Eren, right? There's a bit of jealousy, of course. There's a rivalry, yet there is a mutual respect and understanding. I mean, Jean is such a phenomenal character, and I love the fact that he's getting the spotlight in these last few episodes and this late in the game, and that he is playing a crucial part in the end game of this series, right? That's massive, right? To have a focus on a character this late in the game really establishes just how important someone like Jean is. And again, one of my favorite characters of the story. So I'm all for this, man. I'm happy about this. He's easily top 3 for me. As I'm on the topic of Jean, let's go to the opening. Wow, that kind of really caught me by surprise, right? He's got this perfect scenario, this perfect situation that includes Mikasa, right, and a child they have together. I mean, I think it's quite unmissable that it is meant to be Mikasa, right? They kind of reiterate that by showing a close-up of the scar, and then later in the episode, they kind of, just to make sure, if you missed it, they showed that side of Mikasa's face again. It's her and Jean standing side by side, I think. Or it could have been Armin. Regardless, it's a shot of her cheek and that scar, right? Yeah, so, and notice how she has long hair, just like how Jean liked in season 1 in the early days of the 1/4, the iconic 1/4. And in this perfect situation, in this dream of his, she has long hair again, and they have a beautiful baby together. And I loved how it kind of looked like an older Jean a few years down the line, clearly. Have a bit more of a beard going on. So yeah, I love that imagery. Is there maybe a bit of foreshadowing there? Could the series end like this? These two characters kind of ending up together down the line. Let's see, man. I don't know. I don't think it's that far-fetched. But in that sense, I don't know how interested Mikasa is in Jean. Not that it's an important thing at this moment in time. But, I wouldn't be shocked. Say if it is a story, if it is an endgame that does have Eren dying, and I think a lot of people really have that kind of locked in at this point, right? That, yeah, essentially, Eren probably has to die by the end of the series, right? So, yeah, I could see that kind of ending, right? That ultimately, yes, Eren does end up protecting his friends, and he does succeed in giving them a life beyond this, right? So, yeah, I could see that. I could see a bit of foreshadowing there. It's really distinct imagery, right? Yes, it's Jean's perfect situation, essentially. So, he's got quite a vivid picture of this in his mind. And, that was a point I've made a few times now. The fact that Eren has now initiated the Stampede of the Titans, the rumbling, he kind of has to see it through, right? Or see it out. Because now that it's initiated, the walls are gone and the rest of the world knows about it, right? Or they are going to find out about it soon enough. So if he doesn't see it through, and again, that's one of the things I don't think is going to happen. I don't think he's going to be able to see it through. If he even wants to see it through entirely, remains to be seen. Because I do think, this group that's come together now is going to, stop him or try to stop him. And I think, yes, they are going to end up stopping him. But that's the really tragic part of this, right? The fact that he cannot see it through, or the fact that it's not likely that he is going to see it through, means that, yes, sooner or later there is going to be retaliation, right? So yeah, that's a really tragic thing to think about here, a really heartbreaking thing to think about here. How, the people that might survive are going to face the wrath of the rest of the world at some point. And you see that attitude in this episode. You see through Magath, who is entirely unmoved by, you know, Jean's retorts and his explanation for how things have gone down, how, you know, they've had to fight for their lives because of the Titans they set on them, essentially. You see, Magath is not receptive at all, right? He doesn't care. He has no sympathy. He thinks their situation has been nothing in comparison to, you know, the Eldian Empire and the dark days of the Eldian Empire and how they subjugated the rest of the world, and Marley specifically, right? Marley was essentially the nation that was really at the receiving end of this, right? So, you know, you see even through Magath, though, you know, I've mentioned many times that he is someone that is a bit different for sure. He is someone that I really do like as a character. And there's a really great moment later in this episode that is quite promising, right? His reaction to Gabby. But, you know, in that sense, I already knew. I think it was clear since season 4, part 1, that he does care for these young children, right? He does care for these, you know, young warrior candidates. He does feel a sense of responsibility. But here you see the most emotional I've seen Magath, right? The most emotive I've seen Magath. He was quite rattled. He was quite shaken up by this situation he's kind of seeing in front of him. But yeah, you know, you see through Magath's attitude or the resentment that, yes, you know, even someone intelligent like Magath could have the capacity to hold that over them, right? The 2,000 years of rule of the Eldian Empire. So imagine if Eren doesn't end up going through with the entire Stampede of the Titans, or if he is stopped at some point. Imagine the rest of the world that is left, right? And the brutality and the aftermath of it all. Yeah, you know, they're not going to be as forgiving either, right? So, of course, you know, the one aspect of this all that I don't think anyone can really resolve here, then, you know, that goes, it's true for real life as well, right? Hate breeds hate, retaliation breeds retaliation. You know, you're not going to be able to solve that. You know, that's not an issue that Eren Yeager is going to be able to solve, nor do I think he wants to solve that issue, right? I think it's pretty clear he's doing this for his friends and Perdí, his home. Yeah, so unfortunately, even though, you know, they're deciding to take down Eren Yeager, they're going to have to face the music. They just are. I think it's almost a given at some point. But that's the thing here, right? The hardline approach Isayama-san is taking here, and the characters are taking. Characters like Jean and Hanji, that, you know, they know a reckoning is going to come at some point, yet they are able to decide that, yeah, the right thing to do here is to stop Eren. And, you know, I just mentioned Magath, you know, again, a character I really enjoyed in season 4, part 1, really interesting character. You know, clearly there was something different about him than the rest of these Marleyans. You know, I'm not excusing some of the things he's put into motion. You see that he seems to be quite ashamed of himself as well now after seeing Gabby in that state. Again, you know, this was the most emotive I've seen him, or most emotional I've seen Magath. You see, he kind of even wants to reach out as he sees this child in despair, but he kind of has to pull back, right? He realizes maybe this is not the time. He realizes that maybe, okay, maybe I should stay out of it for now. But yeah, you see right there, that was the moment. I think right then and there, he realizes that, you know, how wrong this was, putting these children in these positions, putting these warrior candidates, these young children in these situations, right? How inhumane that was. You see all of that right in his reaction, I think. I feel like that was quite clear in the way it was animated, his reaction to it all, that he is quite ashamed in that moment, that he has a lot of regrets in that moment. Now, you know, him caring about these children, you know, be it Falco or Gabby, that's not something new, right? I knew, you could see that in season 1, sorry, not season 1, part 1 of season 4, that he does feel a responsibility for them, that he does look at them a bit differently than some of these other Marleyan officials, right? Again, there's that great moment of him kind of lingering there, right? Kind of watching these Eldian soldiers return to Liberio, right? So it was great to see Magath kind of emote in that sense, given how almost rigid and, you know, cold he was to Jean's retorts or Jean's explanations for all of these things. And I'm not saying he feels this just for Gabby, this young child. I'm saying he's probably feeling that for all the children that have been sent out as warriors, right, or been trained as warriors at that point in time, or being put in that situation. Again, it always kind of circles back to Mr. Browse, right? That it's up to the adults to, help the children escape the forest or keep them out of the forest. I think Magath has just realized that as well, right? That he's failed at that. That he might have done a terrible thing playing his part in all of this. Yeah. And he gets to see firsthand just how much it's affected some of these warrior candidates that they trained and brainwashed, indoctrinated as children. He sees, the emotional mess that Reiner has become, just the effect it's had on someone like Reiner, right? Someone who does not believe for a second that he deserves forgiveness. He feels, every part of Reiner feels that he deserves punishment and everything that he has coming, right? You see that Jean is telling him to stop now, but Reiner knows he doesn't deserve this, or he feels that he doesn't deserve forgiveness. He deserves Jean's punishment, and he gets it. And again, I mentioned callbacks. It kind of goes back to Declaration of War, right? Season 4, episode 5. And the cold open, the poignant cold open, Bertolt mentioning maybe he just wanted to be judged, right? And he's speaking of that man who hung himself, but again, it applied to Reiner, right? Same type of thing playing out here. In fact, it's the same score that is playing out as he's explaining the situation, right? The Marco situation. And then, of course, speaking of musical callbacks and callbacks in general, that exact score is the same score that Tiber on the stage goes on to ask for the strength. Lend me your strength against these devils of Paradis, right? You see that at this point in time, you have Falco and Gabi asking Jean to lend them their strength, right? Same thing kind of playing out, same score, but this time, it's a bit of a different situation. But yeah, you've got to love Isayama-san and his callbacks. There's a plethora of that in this episode, so much of it, right? There's even really fun moments like Levi Heicho, breaking the tension, introducing a bit of levity to the situation by mentioning how noisy it is. It's kind of similar to Sasha, right? In the aftermath, in Midnight Sun, in the beginning of Midnight Sun, on top of the wall, right? Telling them how noisy it is. And then, speaking of callbacks, there's yet another one, right? Bit of a parallel. You see that Falco and Gabi kind of get to relive their own conversation. And this is in Liberio, as Gabi and Falco kind of have a back and forth about, oh, they did it first. Oh, did you see it? Oh, or, our people did this to them. They destroyed their home. They killed their loved ones, right? You see it kind of plays out again, but this time it's these really experienced individuals from either end. You've got Jean and Magath, kind of the same type of conversation playing out, right? Oh, you want to talk about a history, do you? And then Magath goes into the Eldian Empire, and then Jean speaks of they had no choice but to fight back. You did this to us. You destroyed our home. Because of your actions, people's loved ones died, and that kind of shaped them and their trajectory, right? And I'm speaking of Eren now. But, that must have been quite the experience for Gabi, right? Because, of course, Falco was quite understanding of this situation, even back in Liberio. In that sense, it was clear that, it's being implied here that there's blood on everyone's hands. I mean, beyond it actually being implied, it's clear to us, the audience, that yes, everyone has blood on their hands. No one is really able to take the moral high ground here, and no one really tries to take the moral high ground either, right? Because they understand that they've done their part in this, or they've played their part in this cycle of hatred and violence, right? Yet you see Gabi is now seeing Magath and Jean, who she knows as these, established and experienced individuals, right? Important people. They're kind of stuck in that same mindset, and Gabi's just had this amazing character arc, overcoming all of that, right? Understanding that she was wrong. Her, mentality was wrong. And of course, in that sense, you see Magath's reaction to Gabi later on, her breakdown, her emotional breakdown, and asking for help, begging for help, essentially. He knows that Gabi is one of the most, he knew that Gabi is one of the most indoctored, essentially most brainwashed child soldiers they had, right? And to see her like that now, you see that also played a part in this eye-opening experience for Magath, right? And, it's much tougher for a child of her age to overcome that. Yes, you have Falco, who's a bit of an outlier in that sense. And, maybe Falco is the one person you can say has no blood on his hands. Yes, he is a child soldier, but, there's just nothing about Falco that makes you think, this individual has blood on his hands, right? He's just so wholesome, this innocent child, as Connie noted as well. I mean, it's certainly harsh, right? This everyone has blood on their hands approach. But I think one thing that is for sure is that everyone played a part in this situation. And then speaking of that, and, people asking the tough questions, the right questions, Annie approaching Mikasa, right? I mean, first she approached all of them, right? Jean, Armin, Connie, Mikasa, and, asked them, can you do it? Could you kill Eren if you're put in that position, right? But then it kind of streamlines into a Mikasa and Annie conversation. I mean, at no part did I think it's actually going to, turn into a fight or anything. But it's certainly a tense situation, right? Because Annie is asking a lot of harsh questions, essentially. Or not harsh, but again, questions that are needed, right? Asking Mikasa, is she in the position to even decide that she could potentially go against Eren, or she could potentially kill him if the time came, right? You see, at first, Mikasa almost kind of, puts that notion aside, and she doesn't even entertain that idea that, he has to die to stop him, right? She said, there's other things that can be done to make Eren stop, right? And then, as the conversation plays out, you see that Annie feels that, if they were to attack Eren in an attempt to kill him, that Mikasa and the rest probably would try to stop them. But Mikasa more so than the rest, right? In that sense, I've got to say, I'm really quite proud of Mikasa in this episode. Her love for Eren has been one of these beautiful things about her character, right? Maybe early season 1, you could even make the argument that it was maybe a bit of toxic love in that sense. And, the notion of toxic love has certainly been a theme here and there, right, throughout the series as well. But, here you see that beautiful love for Eren doesn't quite blind her from the things that need to be done. Her stepping up and realizing almost immediately that, yes, even though she loves this individual more so than anyone else, that she cannot accept this. She cannot side with this individual that she loves so much. And you see, even for a character like Mikasa, who does love Eren, right? Who has this beautiful love for Eren, even she is able to draw the line, right? Even she is able to take the hardline approach. Even she cannot, give him a pass for this, for the things he set into motion. Of course, Annie brings up that notion that it's difficult for Mikasa to even think about anyone else than Eren, or to think that anyone else could be important, or there could be anyone more important than Eren. No. Not. I think here you see that that's not the case at all, right? That she is able to put the lives of innocents ahead of someone she loves so much, right? But in that sense, bit of a callback there. She, Annie asking Mikasa, could she do it? Could she kill Eren? You have Mikasa asking Eren the same thing in season 1, right? Can you kill Annie? And that's in the underground tunnel, right? And you see Eren is kind of struggling at that moment to even answer that. Ultimately, he wasn't able to kill Annie, right? That gave her the chance to crystallize. But yeah, I've got to say, I was really happy to see how things played out here for Mikasa. And that notion of toxic love, or the presence of that at points of this story, I'm not saying it's exclusive just to Mikasa or anything, or I'm not even saying that, it remains toxic love. Maybe early season 1, you could think like that, that it is kind of like this obsession, toxic love, right? The type of love that's not really reciprocated, right? There's other examples of this. You see Annie on the other end. She's got this one goal. She wants to return to her father, so much so that she said she would do it all over again if she could. You see her father's treatment of Annie wasn't the best at all, right? It was actually downright abusive. Though by the end of it, right at the end, as she's about to depart, he does end up realizing, right? But I still feel like this whole notion of her, so badly wanting to go back to that father, there is a bit of toxic love there, right? The notion of toxic love is present there. And you see, at this point, it feels like a lifetime ago, but, the Ymir backstory, right? That notion of her wanting to be loved, And again, you know, that one frame of her seeing that couple kind of getting married and sharing that intimate moment, you see that was the type of thing she longed for. I mean, in that sense, I guess you could say that Stockholm syndrome, or you know, the possibility of that is, it is kind of toxic love, isn't it? So yeah, you know, I think there's many examples of this throughout the story, right? You know, I think one of the really standout moments of this episode was also Yelena, right? Wow, this agent of chaos. And I got a bit of a backstory on her. I mean, her actions are kind of even more despicable in that sense, right? She kind of sided with Zeke for such self-serving reasons, right? To be a part of history, right? She wanted to be remembered, essentially, or play a part in history. And of course, her infatuation and her toxic love for Zeke probably played a part in this as well, right? But, you know, I loved how, you know, in this last attempt to kind of create this divide and, you know, kind of fan the flames of hatred once again, kind of stir the pot in a sense, you know, she's certainly quite experienced at that. She goes, you know, one by one and reminds them of the things they've done and the things they've done to each other and the reasons they still have to kind of, you know, hate each other. And yeah, man, it's a tough segment. It's a tough segment, and you know, ultimately leads to that Reiner Marco moment, and Jean, you know, just not being able to hold it in at some point, and does lash out, and he unleashes a brutal beating on Reiner. You see, like, he immediately broke his nose and probably cracked his jaw. You know, a lot of teeth go missing. A lot of pent up rage came out at that point, and not even just pent up rage, just the realization that someone like Marco, someone so pure, someone that had such an impact on him, and someone that clearly had such an impact in this episode as well, right, was given that kind of treatment. That died in that manner, alone and scared. I mean, Yelena had no chill, man. She just pulled out the receipts. She goes through them one by one and the things they've done. I mean, she had a lot of detailed and descriptive recall of these incidents and things they've done to each other, right? I mean, she might be a little bit crazy. She is a bit of a fanatic, agent of chaos and all that, but she is an intelligent individual. You really have to be able to pull off some of these things she pulled off in season 4, part 1. So yeah, you know, Yelena still appears or remains to be this really fascinating figure, a side character essentially. And again, you know, that's one of the strengths of Isayama-san, having these phenomenal and fantastic and intriguing side characters come in and out of the series, right? I thought it was a fantastic moment of the series, a fantastic experience as a fan of the series, to see so many of these characters kind of come together, right? And kind of interact. Really, you know, and you really feel the history. You really do feel the history there. And, you know, speaking of feeling the history, wow, you know, Hanji-san kind of remembering all of her comrades, her fallen comrades. Wow, there's so much history there, right? And I'm speaking of, you know, Commander Smith and the rest of the fallen scouts in the opening there. Again, it's really similar to The Perfect Game. The commander himself kind of having a really similar moment, right? Speaking of callbacks, that's kind of like a carbon copy of that scene, essentially, right? If you look at it from Hanji's perspective, if she was to let this go down, if she doesn't try to stop if she doesn't try to stop Eren from, you know, doing this, or at least try to stop him, then to her it kind of feels like all of these comrades, these fallen scouts, they died for nothing. Because ultimately, if you go back to, right, the original goal of the scouts has always been to, you know, save humanity from extinction, from, you know, the Titans. It's kind of come full circle, hasn't it? Now, you know, that Titan threat happens to be one of their own, essentially, who put it into motion. And now you have the remnants of the 104th and the scouts, the last of their kind. You've got Heicho, and then you've got Hanji, who truly feels alone in that moment, doesn't she? In that opening. She's full of regrets. She blames herself quite a bit. And she does take responsibility in how things kind of played out with Eren, right? And the path he took. And of course, you know, it was great to see the OG Levi squad. You see people like Ian, right? Mike, all of them are present. And you even see Pixis's assistant. I mean, I don't want to call her an assistant because she was certainly more than that. I just don't remember her name, but she was always kind of there for Pixis, right? She was kind of responsible for taking care of Pixis, right? But yeah, again, another fantastic callback to the perfect game and the last moments of Commander Smith and his poignant speech he gives to the scouts that follow him into hell, essentially, into their death. Except one survived, Flock, who is kind of set up right at the end there. I mean, I was getting a really distinct final boss or main boss feel from that shot. He's got Kiyomi Azumabito as a captive. I mean, in that sense, it's quite clear that that's the direction the story is heading into, or the next part is heading into, a standoff, right? A clash against the Jaegerists. And then, of course, through Flock and the Jaegerist ideology, you do see the other side of all of that, right? Jean had these questions, these concerns about, okay, if you stop Eren, then they're going to come for us, right? You see that Flock, and I mean, it's mainly Flock, and because of him, the Jaegerists kind of came on board, right? You see, he has certainly thought of that, and he has taken that action, that, the final action of, yes, this is the right move, that Eren should destroy all our enemies, because if not, this is going to happen. They are going to retaliate, and they want us dead, right? So I don't agree with Flock. I don't agree with the Jaegerist ideology. Again, it's kind of really leaning into fascism at this point. But you can see that angle, right? And you see that it's by choice. It's quite a distinct inclusion in this story by Isayama-san to have that perspective as well, right? Even though he's certainly drawing a hard line and, he's spelling it out for some of the audience, essentially. Genocide, there's just no... it's just not acceptable in any case or in any scenario. Yet that perspective is there. It's been included into the story. But going back to that notion of shared history for us, the audience as well, right? A lot of these characters that have passed on, that have died, all of us saw their story play out from the first season, right? So many of these characters, they were prominently featured characters that have died since then. And you really feel the gravitas of it all. You feel the history that's kind of present throughout the first 4 seasons of this anime, this story. And that's the thing you get through, long form storytelling, right? It's able to establish that history, that feeling of a lived history, essentially. And I really, really enjoyed the character focus in this. And, some of Isayama-san's strengths are certainly on display here, because all of us gravitate towards characters that kind of really, get the gears turning in our minds. A lot of us, appreciate characters that feel so real, characters that are able to invite intrigue, right? Characters that require effort to understand on our part. And of course, all of us take great pleasure in superbly crafted characters, right? And I'd say that's been one of Isayama-san's strong points, right? Of this series, of Shingeki no Kyojin, Attack on Titan. Yeah, so I thought this was a fantastic episode. You see by the end of it, for the time being, maybe they're able to kind of set their differences aside. And even that in itself has this credibility to it, right? That the fact that for the time being, they all understand that they've wronged each other. They all have a part to play in this. They all have blood on their hands. Yet they're able to kind of, for now, put it aside, right? It's not, at no point is it presented as, oh, they're all friends now. They're all, together forever. So I thought even that was quite authentic. By the end of it, you do see that they all kind of leave together with the children, Falco and Gabby, and they leave the forest, right? They kind of leave that dense forest. Again, that symbology that's kind of been established in this story at this point. And then, of course, on to the next. So yeah, I thought that was a fantastic episode, really. I really enjoyed that. I love the direction of it. I love the unique take of it, the approach of it. And I thought it was a necessary episode to give it credibility and to give it authenticity, right? So yeah, I was really quite happy with that episode. So I would love to hear other people's opinions on it. But if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in full length or full opacity, consider checking out the Patreon page, and the link for that is in the description, in the pinned comment, much like the link for social media. And in terms of social media, Twitter specifically. Again, if you're into that, check it out. Right then, thank you for joining me and thank you for your time. And I hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.